Okay, Jason, this happened late last night. If anyone hasn't seen it, let me set up what happened, then I'll tell you what Ty Jerome said. But the Cavaliers signed Sam Merrill to a 4-year, $38 million contract over the weekend. Ty Jerome then signed a 3-year, $28 million deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. I believe that last year in the Memphis deal is a player option. I believe it's an option year. I haven't seen the exact details, but that was what I was told. And then Ty Jerome last night on his own Instagram page, meaning from the source himself, posted this: Cleveland this past year will always hold a special place in my heart. Although I was never presented with the option of returning, nor did last season end how I wanted to, I will never forget all that this year brought. Jason, that is not an unnamed source. That is from the man himself, the third place finisher in the 6th Man of the Year voting, saying he was never presented with the option of returning. Your thoughts on Cleveland, if we're taking Ty at his word, just deciding to go in a different direction than offering the third place finisher in the 6th Man of the Year voting some sort of contract to stay with his most recent team?
I'm a little surprised because I just think they changed their mind. I think the Cavs changed their mind because there was one, and teams do that, frankly, quite often. There was a point last year where that was going to be their number one sort of priority or offseason goal, was trying to find a way to hang on to him. And we know how the season ended. We know he had a horrible series against the Pacers. I'm a little surprised that that would pivot them from he's the number one priority to not an offer at all. If Ty's telling the truth on that, I'm not entirely sure that he's telling the total truth on that. But I'm also a little surprised now that like the dust is settled, we've had time to digest it all. I'm a little surprised at the length of Sam's contract, that they went to 4 years. Mm-hmm. We kept talking about their window is really 2 more years. And we kept talking about an offer, a 2-year offer for what a 2-year offer for Ty, what that would look like. So I'm a little surprised. I think they were trying to get ahead of the market with Sam. Clearly he was the priority in the end. I think for some of the spacing issues that you alluded to earlier, and the way that he can create space and the way that he can obviously shoot the three. And I'm just a little surprised at how this ended with Ty. I think the defense and the athleticism thing is real, but they are good enough in other spots to sort of cover that up, I thought, to limit his deficiencies. When you put Ty in a role that he is capable of, he's proven to you what he can do, what he can deliver. It's when you ask him to be more than what he is, I think, is where he got exposed a little bit. But I just think clearly, I think the Cavs thought that it was not sustainable, and what he did last year is not repeatable, or else he'd be back here.
Yeah, for the sake of this discussion, Jason, I agree with you that Ty gave us a little insight, but I always have a feeling that it may not be the full story. It's probably somewhere in between. You hear players say things all the time. You hear teams say things all the time. And when the dust settles and you get the real story a few years later and you find out what truly happened, it usually lies somewhere in the middle. Maybe Ty didn't feel like whatever offer Cleveland made was fair value, so he didn't even see it as a true contract offer because it was something he never would accept. I don't know. I haven't talked to anyone. I don't know the exact details. At the end of the day, I said this on UCSS yesterday. I'll repeat it here today. I am flabbergasted that Sam got more years, more overall money, and a higher average annual value than Ty Jason. Shocked. I understand the series against Indiana was a debacle for Ty. Could not have gone worse, not just offensively. That's what we focus on, but they picked on him defensively too. He was a complete liability on that end as well. But we also had a 74-game sample size in the regular season where I would die on the hill that he was the most impactful bench player on a permanent basis off the bench. And how many times did we come in the day after a game, Jason, saying, Cavs don't win that without Ty Jerome. Mm-hmm. Cavs don't. And I love Sam. Sam's my guy. But did we ever come in the next day and say, Sam Merrill swung that game for Cleveland? Like, no, we didn't. So at the end of the day, I would have preferred Cleveland going the Ty Jerome route, even for the exact same contract they gave Sam, as opposed to giving that money to Sam. But for whatever reason, Cleveland felt that either it wasn't repeatable, he had been exposed in a certain kind of way and maybe would never recover. But to that point of, did Indiana expose something against Ty? I would also just counter, Indiana kind of exposed Jalen Brunson in a way. And they made SGA work harder in the finals than SGA worked at any point in the regular season, to where he had games where he did not look anything like a league MVP, Jason. I think a lot of that has to do with Indiana being an incredible defensive team and their point of attack defense being top notch more than it says Ty can never play in that kind of style or can play at that kind of pace. I'm surprised. I love the fact that Ty came out and said this, because I like when players speak their minds and are transparent. I'm not saying he's 100% being honest, because like I said, I do believe there's probably a little more to it than, oh, they simply never called. That's usually how it works. They have these discussions, and if they can't come to a ballpark range, then an offer is probably never made. But hey, if Ty wants to call it the Cavs for not re-signing him after trading for his best friend with a GM that clearly coveted him from the get-go, because that was a guy Koby considered trading up for in the draft a couple of years ago, then I'm all for Ty calling him out, Jason. I'm all for him.
Yeah,
it makes me do something to talk about too in the middle of July. So I also appreciate them for that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting when they play. It's funny. I was thinking about this, totally kind of off topic, but kind of related to Ty. I've been thinking about how much the Cavs just been getting crushed and destroyed in the national narrative all summer long. And I thought back to that Virginia team that lost in the first round to a 16 seed. I remember who beat them now. The Baltimore school, right? Wasn't it Baltimore? Yeah. Beat them in the first round. So number one seed in the tournament becomes the first team to lose to a 16 seed, and everybody just destroyed Virginia. And then they come back the next year and win the national championship. And obviously Ty was from Virginia, was at Virginia during that time.
So is DeAndre.
You're right. Yeah, DeAndre was too. So maybe we can talk to DeAndre about that as the season goes on. I don't know, just one of those weird things I was thinking about. But it'd be interesting to see when they play each other, what Ty has to say about it.
One last thing on this, Jason. You mentioned moving DeAndre Hunter to the starting lineup. I had been against it last season. I just think it's really hard to insert a guy midseason into a starting lineup while he's learning a new offense, coming from a completely different culture from Atlanta to Cleveland. Now I think you have to start him, partly because when you look at the Cavs bench, and we're going to talk about Tyrese Proctor in a second, Max Strus might be their best playmaker on the bench now without Ty Jerome. I mean, maybe it's Jalen Tyson if he takes a gigantic leap from his rookie year to his sophomore year, which I fully expect him to do. But I'm not sure if you want a guy who's never been in that situation being your primary creator off the bench. Maybe it's Proctor. Maybe it's Craig Porter Jr. in year 3 making a similar leap. Maybe Merrill has that in his bag that we didn't know. But DeAndre Hunter is an isolation scorer. His assist numbers throughout his career, for as good as he's been in other facets, have been comically low. Like, seriously, one of the lowest assist rates in the entire NBA. When we did the whole DeAndre Hunter versus Cam Johnson talk last trade deadline, part of the reason I preferred Johnson was Hunter really doesn't pass the ball. We saw it even when he was in Cleveland last year. So I think that fits better in the starting lineup now than with Strus. And Strus seriously might be their best playmaker in that second unit. And I think that second unit is going to need a little bit of a playmaking push. So I was against it last year for a couple different reasons. Now with some material changes, I think Hunter has to start, and Strus is coming off the bench.
I've liked that lineup the best all along. I've thought since the day he got here, Hunter should be in the starting lineup and Max should be coming off the bench. When you talk about how small they are in the front court or in the back court, DeAndre at least provides a little bit of length on the floor to help with that. So I like Max as a better fit as a playmaker coming off the bench, and I like DeAndre's fit better in the starting lineup, especially. I mean, let's see what the East looks like, because I think we're still trying to put all the pieces together. But I'm going back to last year with how big Boston was. Obviously, Boston's going to look a lot different now. Maybe Orlando's that team now, that really big team that the Cavs have to contend with. That where they need a little bit more size on the starting lineup.